One morning on my way to my son's high-rise law office, I helped a disheveled older man on the bus who was being harassed by a group of teenagers. When we got off at the same stop, he followed me and asked if he could tag along just to see the inside of the building. I agreed out of pity, thinking he was just a lonely soul. When we arrived, the moment my son saw him, his face went pale. He screamed at security to throw the old beggar out, not realizing that the man in the tattered coat was the one person who could end his career with a single phone call. That old man was Atticus Hale, the founder of the firm, and my son had just made the biggest mistake of his life. My name is Leonard Baxter. I am 67 years old, and this is how I took down my own family. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. The number Q44 bus was packed tight that Tuesday morning, smelling of wet wool and stale coffee. I stood near the back holding onto the metal pole, my knuckles white. I was a union master electrician for 40 years. I built half the skyline these people were staring at on their phones, but today I felt small. My son Connor had summoned me to his office like a naughty schoolboy. "Be there at 9 sharp, Dad, and do not wear those work boots," he had texted. I looked down at my boots. They were clean polished, but they were work boots. They were all I had. The bus lurched forward, throwing people off balance. In the priority seats near the front, a group of 3 teenagers were laughing loudly. One of them, a kid with a shaved head and a sneer aimed at the world, kicked out his leg, tripping an older man trying to navigate the aisle. The old man stumbled, his cane clattering to the dirty floor. He looked frail, dressed in a long gray coat that had seen better days, and a flat cap pulled low over his eyes. "Oops, watch your step, Grandpa," the kid laughed, high-fiving his friend. The old man tried to bend down to retrieve his cane, but the bus hit a pothole and he nearly fell over. No one moved. The suits looked at their phones. The mothers looked out the window. The indifference was suffocating. It was the same look my son gave me when I talked about the old days. That look that said, "You have expired. You just do not know it yet." I pushed off the pole. My knees popped, a reminder of decades climbing ladders, but I moved with the speed of a man who used to break up bar fights in Queens. I shoved past a businessman and grabbed the cane off the floor. I held it out to the old man, steadying him by the elbow. "Here you go," I said, my voice gravelly. The old man looked up. His eyes were sharp, surprisingly blue and clear amidst the wrinkles. "Thank you," he murmured. I turned to the kid. Get up." The kid blinked, looking me up and down. "What?" I said, "Get up," I repeated louder this time, my voice cutting through the hum of the engine. "You see this man? He has 50 years on you. You trip him, you laugh, and now you sit there while he stands. Move or I will move you. I might be 67, but my forearms are still thick from bending conduit." The kid saw the look in my eyes, the look of a man with absolutely nothing left to lose. He scoffed, tried to save face by rolling his eyes, but he got up. "Sit down," I told the old man. He sat arranging his coat with a strange sort of dignity. I stood over him, blocking the teenagers from view, acting as a human shield, until their stop came up and they shuffled off, swearing under their breath. The bus rattled on toward Manhattan. The old man tapped my arm. "You did not have to do that," he said. "I have dealt with worse than schoolyard bullies." "I know," I replied, staring out the window at the steel bridges passing by, but I was not going to watch it happen. Not today. He studied me. "You seem angry, friend. Heading to a funeral?" "Worse," I said. "I am heading to see my son. He is a lawyer. Big shot. Corner office. He thinks he owns the world because he wears a $3,000 suit." "Lawyers," the old man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "A necessary evil." "Why the long face? Is he suing you?" I snorted. "No. He wants something. He always wants something. Today he is demanding I sign some papers. Probably wants me to sell my house. It is the only thing I have left since my wife Patricia passed. He says the neighborhood is going down and I am too old to manage the stairs. But I know he just needs the equity. He drives a Porsche, but he calls me asking for money to pay his electric bill. The old man nodded slowly, tapping his fingers on the head of his cane. Children forget who built the ground they stand on. My car broke down this morning. A Rolls-Royce, can you believe it? Finest engineering in the world, and it dies on 3rd Avenue. I decided to take the bus, to see how the other half lives. It has been an educational morning. I looked at him. A Rolls-Royce. Sure. And I am the King of England. He looked like he hadn't bought a new coat since the Reagan administration. But I didn't say anything. We were just two old men discarded by the morning rush. Where are you headed? I asked. Downtown, the old man said. Same as you, I suspect. Mind if I walk with you? I left my wallet in the car, and I do not want to argue with security at these fancy buildings. I hesitated. Connor had told me to be discreet, to come in the back way. Walking in with a stranger who looked like a vagrant was the opposite of discreet. But I looked at this man, his hands shaking slightly on his cane, and I saw myself. Come on, I said as the bus hissed to a halt. Stick with me. I am Leonard. Atticus, the man said, shaking my hand. His grip was surprisingly firm. We got off the bus, and the city noise hit us like a physical blow. Horns, sirens, the aggressive energy of Manhattan. We walked 2 blocks to the Hale & Partners building. It was a glass monolith piercing the sky, cold and imposing. This was where my son worked. This was where he had forgotten where he came from. We reached the revolving doors. I stepped forward, but a security guard, a massive man with a headset, stepped in my path. Delivery entrance is around the back, he said, not even looking me in the eye. I am not a delivery, I said, straightening my back. I am Leonard Baxter. I am here to see Connor Baxter. He is expecting me. The guard looked at my boots, then at my worn jacket. Then he looked at Atticus standing beside me, looking even worse. Mr. Baxter is a senior associate, the guard said skeptically. He didn't mention any visitors, especially not. He gestured vaguely at our existence. Call him, I said, my voice rising. Tell him his father is here, and he brought a friend. And the guard sighed, annoyed, and tapped his earpiece. While he muttered into his radio, I looked at Atticus. Sorry about this. My son is particular. Atticus was looking up at the glass ceiling of the lobby, staring at the massive chandelier. It is a bit gaudy, isn't it? He mused. I always told them the marble was too slippery when it rains. Before I could ask what he meant, the elevator doors dinged, and Connor came striding across the lobby. He looked sharp, I had to give him that. Tailored navy suit hair, perfect, walking with the confidence of a man who has never had to scrub grease from his fingernails. But the moment he saw me, his face twisted. He didn't hug me. He didn't say hello. He marched right up to us and hissed. Dad, what the hell are you doing? I told you the service entrance. Do you know who walks through this lobby? Clients. $1-million clients. And you are standing here looking like you just came off a construction site. I built sites like this, Connor, I said, fighting the urge to slap him. And this is the front door. I am your father, not your dirty secret. Connor rolled his eyes, checking his Rolex. We do not have time for your blue-collar pride today, Dad. Megan is waiting upstairs. We need those signatures before lunch. Then he noticed Atticus standing quietly next to me, leaning on his cane. Who is this? Connor asked, pointing a manicured finger at Atticus. Is this? Did you pick up a homeless person on the way here, Dad? Jesus Christ. He is a friend, I said, stepping between them. He helped me find the place. He is a bum, Connor spat. He turned to the security guard who was watching with amusement. Get this trash out of here. Now. And Dad, get in the elevator. We are going up. The guard stepped toward Atticus, reaching for his arm. "Sir, you need to leave." Atticus didn't move. He didn't look at the guard. He looked straight at Connor. His blue eyes, which had been warm on the bus, were now like chips of ice. "I am with him," Atticus said, his voice low but cutting through the lobby noise. "If he goes up, I go up." Connor laughed, a cruel barking sound. "You have got to be kidding me. You think you can just walk into Hale and Partners because you tagged along with another old man? This isn't a soup kitchen. Get out before I have you arrested for trespassing." I grabbed Connor's arm. "Stop it. He is coming with me. If he stays down here, I leave. And you don't get your signatures." Connor froze. He looked at me, then at Atticus, then back at me. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He needed that house. He needed the equity. He was desperate, though he tried to hide it. He couldn't risk me walking away. "Fine," he snarled, pulling his arm away from my grip. "Fine. Bring him up." But he sits in the corner and keeps his mouth shut. "If he smells up the boardroom, I am taking it out of your monthly allowance." I didn't have a monthly allowance. I lived off my union pension, but Connor liked to pretend he supported me. It made him feel big. We rode the elevator in silence. The numbers ticked up. 20, 30, 40. My ears popped. Atticus stood in the back watching Connor's reflection in the polished metal doors. Connor was furiously typing on his phone, probably warning his wife that I had brought a stray dog. When the doors opened, we were ushered into a conference room that cost more than my entire life's earnings. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A mahogany table long enough to land a plane on. And sitting at the head of the table was Megan, my daughter-in-law. She didn't stand up. She didn't smile. She was tapping a manicured fingernail against a thick stack of documents. She looked at me, then at Atticus, and her nose wrinkled as if she had smelled a gas leak. "Connor," she said, her voice sharp. "You said it would just be him." "Who is the scarecrow?" Dad's pet, Connor muttered, throwing his folder onto the table. "Just ignore him. He is leaving as soon as we are done." Megan sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of suffering. Wonderful. The smell of old people is overwhelming enough with just one. I felt the heat rise in my neck. Atticus, however, walked calmly to the corner of the room and sat in a leather chair, resting his chin on his cane, observing the room like a hawk in a tree. "Sit down," Leo Megan commanded, pointing to a chair opposite her. "Let's get this over with. I have a spa appointment at 2. I sat. The leather was cold. I felt small in the massive chair. Connor stood behind Megan, acting like her bodyguard, or perhaps her henchman. "Here's the situation, Dad," Connor said, sliding the papers toward me. "As we discussed, your health is declining." "My health is fine," I said. "I still lift weights. I walk 5 miles a day." "Your mental health," Connor corrected smoothly. "You are forgetting things. You are getting confused. Living alone in that big house in Queens. It is irresponsible. We are worried about you." "You want the house," I said, cutting to the chase. Megan leaned forward. "We want to protect the asset, Leo. That neighborhood is changing. The market is volatile. If we transfer the deed to us now, we can leverage the equity to invest. For your future care." "For my care," I repeated. "Or for your credit card bills, Megan." Megan's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." "I saw the new Mercedes in the driveway last week," I said. "I saw the pictures of your trip to the Maldives on Facebook. You tell me you are broke, you tell me you need help, but you live like kings. And now you want my house. The house Patricia and I bought in 1980. The house we paid off working double shifts. It is called maximizing capital." "Leo, something you wouldn't understand with your high school diploma." Megan spat. "Connor, explain it to him." Connor rubbed his temples. "Dad, look. I have debts. Okay, serious debts. I made some bad calls on crypto. I owe people. If I don't come up with liquidity by the end of the month. He stopped glancing at Atticus in the corner. Atticus hadn't moved. He was just watching. So you are in trouble, I said quietly. And instead of asking for help, you try to trick me. You try to tell me I am senile. We are not tricking you, Connor shouted, slamming his hand on the table. We are saving you, because if you don't sign these papers, Dad, I swear to God I will have you declared incompetent. I have a doctor on payroll who will testify that you cannot tie your own shoes. I will put you in the cheapest state-run facility I can find, a place where the nurses steal your teeth and the food tastes like sawdust. And I will sell the house anyway. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. I looked at my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I held when he scraped his knees, the boy I worked overtime for so he could go to law school. He was gone. In his place was this monster in a suit. You would do that, I whispered. I will do what is necessary to survive, Connor hissed. Sign the papers. I looked down at the documents. Transfer of deed, power of attorney, revocable trust. It was a death warrant for my independence. Atticus cleared his throat from the corner. The sound was loud in the tense room. Is this standard practice at this firm? He asked, his voice mild. Coercing the elderly. Threatening parents with fraudulent medical diagnoses. Megan spun around. Shut up, old man. One more word and I will have security drag you out by your hair. Atticus smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. You mentioned you are a partner here, young man, Atticus asked, looking at Connor. I am a senior associate, Connor corrected, puffing out his chest. And I am next in line for junior partner. When the old fossil who owns this place finally kicks the bucket, I will be running this division. Ah, Atticus said. The old fossil. You mean Mr. Hale? That dinosaur. Megan laughed, cruel and sharp. He hasn't been seen in the office in 5 years. He is probably drooling in a mansion somewhere while we do the actual work. We are the future of this firm. Not him. Atticus stood up slowly. He didn't look frail anymore. He looked dangerous. Interesting, he said. Very interesting. Connor turned back to me, ignoring him. Pen. Sign. Now. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so hot it felt like lava in my veins. I looked at the signature line. If I signed this, I was homeless. If I didn't sign it, my son would destroy me legally. He knew the system. I was just an electrician. I can't do it, I said, dropping the pen. It clattered on the mahogany. What do you mean you can't? Connor's face turned purple. I mean, no, I said, standing up. I am not signing. You want the house, you try to take it, but I am not giving it to you. Not today. Not ever. Connor lunged across the table, grabbing my lapels. You selfish old bastard! You have nothing without me! I let you live there. You do not let me do anything, I roared, shoving him back. I bought that house before you were born. Security? Megan screamed, pressing the intercom button. Get security in the boardroom. We have a hostile situation. The door burst open. 2 guards rushed in, the same ones from the lobby. Get them out! Connor yelled, pointing at me and Atticus. Throw them on the street. And Dad, do not think of going home. I changed the locks this morning. I froze. You what? You heard me, Connor sneered, fixing his tie. I acted proactively. The locks are changed. Your key won't work. You are homeless until you sign those papers. So take a walk. Think about how cold it gets at night. And when you are ready to be reasonable, call me. The guards grabbed my arms. I struggled, but they were young and strong. They grabbed Atticus too roughly, handling him by his coat collar. Easy, watch the coat, Atticus said sharply. They dragged us to the elevator down the 40 floors and threw us out onto the sidewalk like garbage. I stumbled, landing on my knees on the concrete. Atticus managed to stay upright, leaning heavily on his cane. It started to rain. A cold, gray New York drizzle. I sat there on the pavement, feeling the wet seep into my jeans. I was 67 years old. My wife was dead. My son was a monster. And I was locked out of my own home. I have nowhere to go, I muttered to the wet ground. Atticus stepped in front of me, blocking the rain. He extended a hand. Get up, Leonard. I looked up. What is the point? He won. He has the lawyers. He has the money. I am just an old man on the sidewalk. Atticus smiled. And that is exactly where he made his mistake. He thinks you are just an old man. He thinks I am just an old man. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Not a taxi, a Phantom. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, black as midnight with tinted windows. The driver hopped out with an umbrella, rushing over to us. Mr. Hale, the driver said, opening the back door. I was worried when you didn't call. Atticus handed the driver his cane. I was conducting field research, Jenkins. It was illuminating. Atticus looked at me. Get in, Leonard. I stared at the car. That is your car. It is, Atticus said. But who are you? I asked, standing up slowly. Atticus turned back to look at the glass tower, at the name etched in steel above the doors, Hale and Partners. I am the dinosaur, Atticus said, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying intelligence. I am the old fossil. I am Atticus Hale, and your son just declared war on the man who signs his paychecks. He ushered me into the car. The leather interior smelled of expensive cologne and power. Where are we going? I asked as the door closed, shutting out the noise of the city. Atticus poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter built into the seat. We are going to my house, Leonard. We are going to get you a dry suit. We are going to get you a hot meal. And then, my friend, we are going to plan a funeral. A funeral, I asked, confused. Who died? Atticus clinked his glass against mine. Connor's career, he said, taking a sip. Drink up. Tonight, we rewrite the will. I drank the whiskey. It burned going down. Outside, the rain lashed against the windows, but inside it was warm. I looked at the building fading in the rearview mirror. My son thought he had thrown me to the wolves. He didn't realize he had just thrown me into the den of the alpha. Tell me about the house, Atticus said, settling back. It is a row house in Queens, I said. Nothing fancy. But I built the deck myself. Patricia planted the hydrangeas out front. Does Connor know about your other assets? Atticus asked casually. I paused. No. He thinks I live on the pension. He doesn't know about the rental properties in Jersey. He doesn't know about the Union Investment Fund. I never told him. I wanted him to make his own way. I didn't want him waiting for me to die. Atticus nodded slowly. Good. Information is ammunition, Leonard. And right now we have all the bullets. The car glided through traffic heading toward the Upper East Side. You know, Atticus said, looking out the window. I founded that firm 40 years ago with nothing but a typewriter and a bad attitude. I built it on respect, on fighting for the little guy. What your son did today, treating you like cattle, treating me like refuse. It is a rot, and rot must be cut out. What do you have in mind? I asked, feeling a spark of hope for the first time that day. Atticus turned to me. Tomorrow night is the firm's annual gala, the Partners' Ball. Connor will be there. Megan will be there. They are expecting a promotion. They are expecting to be crowned royalty. He paused, a wicked grin spreading across his face. I think it is time the founder made a surprise appearance. And I think he should bring his new senior advisor. Who is that? I asked. You, Leonard. You. We are going to walk into that ballroom, and we are going to burn his world to the ground in front of everyone he tries to impress. I looked at my hands. Rough. Calloused. Worker's hands. I am not a lawyer, Atticus. I don't know how to play these games. You don't need to be a lawyer, Atticus said. You just need to be a father who has had enough. Leave the legalities to me. You just bring the truth. The car stopped in front of a townhouse that looked like a fortress. The gates opened. One thing Atticus said before we got out. That lock he changed on your house, yeah. My private security team is already on their way. They will open it. They will secure your belongings, and they will find the documentation Connor mentioned. If he forged anything, if he falsified a single medical record, he isn't just getting fired. He is going to federal prison. I felt a cold shiver. Prison. He was my son. Despite everything, he was my son. Do what you have to do, I said, my voice hard. He crossed the line. He declared me dead while I am still breathing. Good, Atticus said, opening the door. Let's go get you a suit. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in a guest room that was bigger than my entire downstairs. I thought about Connor. I thought about the little boy who used to run to the door when I came home. Where did he go? Was it the money? Was it Megan, or was it me? Did I love him too much? Did I shield him too much from the hardness of the world, so he grew up soft and rotten? It didn't matter now. The time for questions was over. The next morning was a blur of activity. Tailors arrived. Barbers arrived. Atticus wasn't kidding. He transformed me. They shaved my rough beard down to a neat stubble. They put me in a charcoal Italian suit that fit like a second skin. I looked in the mirror, and I didn't see the electrician anymore. I saw a man of consequence. You look like a killer, Atticus said approvingly. I feel like an imposter, I muttered, adjusting the silk tie. You are not an imposter, Leonard. You are the reality check. At 6 p.m., the limousine was waiting. We drove to the Plaza Hotel. The gala was in the grand ballroom. I could see the paparazzi outside, the flashbulbs popping. Are you ready? Atticus asked, checking his cufflinks. I thought about the nursing home brochure Megan had left on the table. I thought about the locks changed on my door. I am ready, I said. We bypassed the red carpet and went in through a private entrance. We waited backstage behind heavy velvet curtains. I could hear the murmur of hundreds of people. I could hear glasses clinking. On stage, a man was speaking. It was the managing partner, a man named Sterling. And we have had a record year, Sterling was saying. Thanks to the tireless efforts of our rising stars. One in particular has shown ruthless dedication. A man who embodies the future of Hale and Partners. Mr. Connor Baxter. Applause. Enthusiastic clapping. I peeked through the curtain. Connor was walking up the steps to the stage. Megan was beaming at the table holding a glass of champagne, looking like she had already won the lottery. Connor took the microphone. He looked handsome, confident, the king of the world. Thank you, everyone, Connor said. It is an honor. I have worked hard to get here. I have made sacrifices. Atticus nudged me. That is our cue. He signaled to the sound technician who was on his payroll. Suddenly, the microphone on stage cut out. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. A single spotlight beam cut through the blackness, hitting not Connor, but the side entrance of the stage. The music changed. It wasn't the polite orchestral music anymore. It was heavy, ominous. Atticus walked out into the light, his cane tapping rhythmically on the floor. The room gasped. A whisper ran through the crowd like wildfire. Is that Hale? Connor froze on stage, his mouth open. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. Atticus took a handheld microphone from his pocket. Good evening, he said, his voice booming. Sorry to interrupt the party, but I hate lies. They give me indigestion. He walked to the center of the stage, standing right next to Connor. Connor shrank back, terrified. You were talking about sacrifices, Mr. Baxter, Atticus said. Tell us. What did you sacrifice? Did you sacrifice your integrity? Did you sacrifice your father? Megan stood up at the table, knocking over her chair. Who is that? That is the bum from the bus. Atticus pointed the cane at her. Sit down, young lady, or I will have you removed. And this time I am not the one in the tattered coat. He turned to the audience. This man, Atticus said, gesturing to Connor, threw me out of his building yesterday because I didn't look rich enough. He called me trash, but that is not his worst crime. Atticus beckoned to the curtain. Come out, Leonard. I stepped into the light. The suit caught the glare. I stood tall. I looked Connor dead in the eye. Dad, Connor whispered the microphone, picking it up. Ladies and gentlemen, Atticus announced. Meet Leonard Baxter, a master electrician, an honest man, and the father that this snake tried to declare insane so he could steal his home to pay off gambling debts. The crowd erupted. Shock. Murmurs. Phones came out recording everything. That is a lie. Connor screamed, panic taking over. He is senile. He doesn't know what he is saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Connor, I said, my voice calm, amplified by the sound system. I know about the mortgage fraud. I know about the locks. And I know you forged my signature on the power of attorney documents. I pulled a folder from my jacket. Atticus's team had been busy. Here is the forensic report, I said, holding it up. The ink is barely dry. Connor lunged for me. Give me that. But he didn't make it. Two men in suits stepped out from the shadows. FBI. Connor Baxter, one of them said. You are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and elder abuse. Connor stopped. He looked at the agents. He looked at me. He looked at Megan, who was currently trying to sneak out the fire exit, but was blocked by security. Dad, please, Connor begged, tears suddenly streaming down his face. Dad, help me. Tell them it is a mistake. I am your son. I looked at him. The silence stretched out. I don't have a son, I said. My son died the moment he decided I was just a paycheck. The agents handcuffed him. They dragged him off stage. The cameras flashed blindingly. Atticus put a hand on my shoulder. It is done. I looked at the empty spot where Connor had stood. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like an amputation. Painful, but necessary to save the rest of the body. I walked off the stage, leaving the stunned silence behind me. I had my dignity back. I had my house back. But as I walked out into the cool night air of New York City, I knew the real work was just beginning. I had to learn how to live for myself again. And Atticus, he was right behind me, humming a tune. So, Leonard, he said, tomorrow we buy the bus company. I think the seats need upgrading, don't you? I smiled for the first time that night. Yeah, I think they do. I stood on the cold concrete sidewalk while the rain began to fall in sheets, soaking through my thin jacket within seconds. The security guard had not just escorted me out, he had shoved me through the revolving doors with a force that nearly sent me sprawling onto the wet pavement. I could still feel his heavy hand on my shoulder, a physical reminder of my status in this world. To them, I was nothing more than debris to be swept away so the beautiful people could enter their glass tower, uncomplicated by the sight of an old man in work boots. I wiped the water from my eyes and looked up at the building that pierced the gray sky. Somewhere up on the 40th floor, my son was likely laughing with his wife, congratulating themselves on handling the problem of his father. My phone buzzed in my pocket, against my thigh, violently vibrating like an angry hornet. I pulled it out with trembling hands, shielding the screen from the rain. It was a text from Connor. You have 24 hours to sign the transfer papers, Dad. If you do not, I will file the competency petition tomorrow morning. Do not blame me for this. You forced my hand. I stared at the glowing words until they blurred. My own son was giving me a deadline to surrender my life. 24 hours. That was all the time I had left of my dignity. I felt a hollow ache in my chest that had nothing to do with the cold. It was the crushing weight of failure. I had raised a boy who grew into a man capable of throwing his father into the street like garbage. I thought about walking to the subway, but my legs felt heavy like lead pipes. I just stood there, paralyzed by the sheer cruelty of it all, letting the rain wash over me, hoping it might wash away the shame. Then a car pulled up to the curb, silently gliding through the puddles like a shark through dark water. It was not a taxi. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, black as midnight, with tinted windows that reflected the miserable city around it. It looked out of place among the yellow cabs and delivery trucks, a beast of pure luxury idling just inches from my knees. I stepped back, assuming I was blocking the way for some VIP client of the firm. But the rear door opened. A warm golden light spilled out from the interior, cutting through the gloom of the rainy afternoon. Sitting inside holding a crystal glass of red wine was the old man from the bus. Atticus. He looked different. The tattered coat was gone, replaced by a silk smoking jacket. He sat with his legs crossed, relaxed and commanding, completely at ease in the opulent leather interior. He looked at me shivering in the rain and gestured with his wine glass. "Get in, Leonard," he said, his voice calm and authoritative. "You look like a drowned rat, and I do not like owing people favors." I stood, frozen water dripping from my nose. "You," I stammered. "But you were on the bus." "Get in before you let the rain in," Atticus interrupted. "We have business to discuss." I climbed inside, mostly out of shock. The door closed with a solid, heavy thud, instantly silencing the roar of the city traffic and the drumming of the rain. The interior smelled of rich leather, expensive cologne, and old money. It was warm, dry, and quiet. I sat on the edge of the seat, afraid to touch anything with my wet clothes. Atticus pressed a button, and a hidden compartment opened, revealing a bottle of wine and another crystal glass. He poured a generous amount and handed it to me. "Drink," he commanded. "It is a Cabernet from my private vineyard. It will put some fire back in your blood." I took the glass, my fingers shaking. "Who are you?" I asked again, staring at him. "On the bus you looked like you didn't have a dime. Now you are riding in a car that costs more than my house." Atticus swirled his wine, staring into the deep red liquid. He smiled, but it was not the gentle smile of a helpless old man. It was a sharp, predatory smile. "I told you, Leonard. I wanted to see how the other half lives. Or rather, I wanted to see how my employees treat the other half." He took a sip and turned to face me. "My full name is Atticus Hale. I am the founder of Hale & Partners. The building you were just thrown out of belongs to me. The chair your son sits in belongs to me. Even the air he breathes in that office is filtered by systems I paid for." I nearly dropped the glass. "You are the owner. You are Connor's boss. Technically, I am the senior managing partner, though I stepped back from daily operations 5 years ago," Atticus said. "I have been observing. I like to know what is happening in my kingdom when the king is away. And what I saw today, Leonard, disgusted me." He leaned forward, his blue eyes hard as flint. "Your son, Connor. He is a senior associate, correct? He is up for junior partner next month. He has been sending me reports about his stellar performance, his ethics, his dedication to justice. And then I watch him throw his own father out of the lobby because his boots are not shiny enough. I watch him threaten a man who has worked his hands to the bone with a fraudulent mental health diagnosis." Atticus shook his head, a look of genuine distaste crossing his face. "It is a rot, Leonard. A deep, festering rot. And I do not allow rot in my firm." I took a large gulp of the wine. It tasted like berries and wood and money. Why did you bring me here? I asked. If you are his boss, why didn't you fire him on the spot? Why play games on the bus? Because firing him is too easy, Atticus said. If I fire him today, he walks away with a severance package and a story about how he was let go due to restructuring. He finds another job at another firm and continues to be a snake. No. Men like Connor do not learn from a slap on the wrist. They only learn when their entire world is dismantled brick by brick. He reached into a leather satchel on the seat next to him and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He tossed it onto my lap. It felt heavy solid, like a brick. Besides, Atticus continued, there is something you need to know. Something that explains why he is so desperate for your house. Why he is pushing you so hard right now. I looked at the envelope. What is this? Open it, Atticus said. I undid the string and pulled out a stack of documents. They were financial records, bank statements, and internal audit logs from Hale and Partners. Rows and rows of numbers, most of which I didn't understand. But some things were highlighted in yellow. Large sums, transfers, dates. I am just an electrician. Atticus, I said, looking up. I don't know what I am looking at. You are looking at theft, Leonard, Atticus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Grand larceny, wire fraud, embezzlement. He pointed a long finger at a column of numbers. Your son Connor has expensive tastes. The luxury apartment, the vacations, the designer clothes for that wife of his. His salary is good, but it is not that good. For the last 18 months, Connor has been siphoning money from client trust accounts. He moves it around, hides it in shell companies, hoping to put it back before the quarterly audits. I felt sick. My stomach churned. Stealing. My son was a thief. He has stolen nearly $2 million, Leonard Atticus said. And here is the kicker. The firm is undergoing a surprise external audit next week. A deep dive. Connor knows this. He knows the missing funds will be discovered unless he replaces them immediately. I looked down at the papers, again my vision swimming. $2 million, I whispered. He is desperate, Atticus said. He doesn't just want your house because he thinks you are old. He needs the equity in your home to leverage a hard money loan to cover a fraction of what he stole. He thinks if he can plug the biggest hole, maybe he can survive the audit. Or maybe he plans to use the money to run. Run, I asked. Flee the country, Atticus said. If he is caught, he is looking at 20 years in federal prison. He is not trying to put you in a home for your safety, Leonard. He is sacrificing you to save his own skin. He is willing to declare you insane, strip you of your rights, and steal the only thing you own just to keep himself out of jail for a few more weeks. The realization hit me harder than the rain. It wasn't just greed. It was survival. Connor was a drowning man, and he was climbing on top of my head to breathe. He was willing to drown me, his own father, just to stay afloat for a few more minutes. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, hot and angry. I wiped it away furiously. He betrayed me, I said, my voice raspy. He betrayed everything I taught him. I worked double shifts. I missed birthdays so he could go to that fancy law school. I thought I was building a future for him. You built a future for a predator, Atticus said, not unkindly. But now you have a choice. What choice? I asked. He has the lawyers. He has the threats. He gave me 24 hours. Atticus smiled again, and this time it was terrifying. You have me, Leonard, and I have something Connor does not. I have the truth, and I have the power to deliver it. He poured more wine into my glass. I am going to destroy him, Atticus said simply. I am going to expose him for exactly what he is, not in a private meeting, not in an email. I am going to do it publicly. I am going to do it so thoroughly that he will never practice law again. He will never hurt anyone again. He leaned back, studying me. But I need your help. It is your signature he needs. It is your house he is targeting. I can fire him for the theft, but for the elder abuse, for the attempted fraud against you, that needs a witness. That needs a victim who is willing to stand up and say no more. I looked at the documents in my lap. I looked at the rain streaking the tinted windows. I thought about Connor's face in the lobby, the shame in his eyes when he looked at me. I thought about Megan calling me smelly. I thought about the text message. 24 hours. He wanted a war. He wanted to play games with power. I looked at Atticus. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Atticus's grin widened. "First, we are going to get you a suit. A real suit. Then we are going to make a phone call. Connor thinks he has 24 hours. We are going to give him a surprise he will never forget. Tomorrow night, the firm is hosting a gala. Connor expects to be promoted. Instead, he is going to meet the real owner of the company. And he is going to meet the new you." The car accelerated, merging smoothly into the city traffic. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like justice. "Let's go," I said. Atticus tapped the glass partition. "Driver, take us to the tailor. We have a gentleman to dress." As we drove away from the scene of my humiliation, I didn't look back. The sad old man who stood in the rain was gone. In his place was a father who was done being a stepping stone. My son wanted to treat me like a stranger. Fine. I would introduce him to the stranger he had created. And this stranger came with a Rolls-Royce and a dossier that would burn his life to the ground. The Rolls-Royce glided through wrought iron gates that looked heavy enough to stop a tank. We were not in Queens anymore. We were in a part of the state where the driveways were longer than my entire street, and the silence was something you had to buy. Atticus lived in a fortress of stone and ivy, a place that screamed old money and absolute power. I looked out the tinted window at the manicured grounds. My son Connor would kill to be invited here. He would sell his soul for a cocktail on this patio. And the irony was that I was the one walking through the front door, not him. The car stopped. The driver opened the door. I stepped out onto gravel that was probably raked by hand every morning. I still felt the phantom dampness of the rain on my skin, but the anger inside me was drying it up, replacing the chill with the burning heat. Atticus led me inside. The foyer was a cavern of marble and art. "We have work to do," Leonard, Atticus said, tossing his cane to a butler who appeared from nowhere. "You look like a man who fixes things. Tonight, we are going to fix you." I looked down at my work boots, scuffed and worn. "I fix circuits, Atticus. I fix wiring. I do not know how to fix this." Atticus turned his eyes gleaming. "You are not fixing wiring tonight. You are building a weapon. And that weapon is you." He snapped his fingers. A team of people appeared. A tailor with a measuring tape around his neck. A barber with a leather case. A stylist holding swatches of fabric. It was ridiculous. It was excessive. It was exactly what was needed. They went to work on me like a pit crew on a race car. I sat in a chair while the barber stripped away the gray stubble, shaving me clean, exposing the jawline I hadn't seen in years. He trimmed my hair sharp and professional. The tailor measured my shoulders, my chest, my inseam, barking numbers in Italian. They didn't ask me what I wanted. They knew. They were sculpting a version of Leonard Baxter that commanded respect. I stood in front of a three-way mirror while they draped a jacket over me. It was charcoal gray wool, soft as butter but structured like armor. A white shirt starched stiff. A silk tie that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I looked at the reflection. The man staring back wasn't the electrician who ate lunch on a cooler. He looked like a CEO. He looked like a man who could crush you with a handshake. Atticus walked in holding a glass of scotch. He nodded slowly. "Now that is a man I would hesitate to cross," he said. "How does it feel?" It feels like a costume, I muttered, adjusting the cuffs. It is armor, Atticus corrected. And you need to fill it. Tell me, Leonard. Connor called you a charity case. He said you have nothing. Is that true? I looked at Atticus in the mirror. The question hung in the air. I had spent my life playing a role. The humble worker. The struggling pensioner. I did it for Connor. I did it so he would learn the value of $1, so he would build his own empire instead of waiting to inherit mine. But look where that got me. It got me thrown onto the sidewalk. I turned around, facing Atticus. No, I said, my voice steady. It is not true. Atticus took a sip of scotch, waiting. I was a union master electrician for 40 years, I said. I worked overtime. I worked holidays. I took every hazardous duty pay shift they offered. But I didn't spend it. I lived on my base pay. I invested the rest. I bought land in industrial zones back in the 80s when nobody wanted it. I bought warehouses. I put every dime into a diversified portfolio that I haven't touched in 20 years. Atticus raised an eyebrow. And Connor knows nothing of this. He thinks I survive on Social Security and a small pension, I said. I wanted him to be hungry. I wanted him to make his own way. If he knew I was sitting on a nest egg, he would have never finished law school. He would have become soft. Atticus laughed, a dry, barking sound. So you are a secret millionaire, Leonard, and your son is stealing pennies from clients because he thinks his father is destitute. That is rich. That is truly rich. I am not a millionaire like you, I said. But I have enough. I have enough to buy that firm of yours if I really wanted to liquidate everything. Atticus grinned. Keep your money, Leonard. You are going to need it for the victory lap. But this changes the dynamic. You are not just a victim fighting back. You are a titan waking up from a nap. He checked his pocket watch. It is time to set the hook. Come with me to the study. We walked into a room lined with books. Atticus sat behind a massive desk and pressed the intercom button. Get me Connor Baxter on the line, he ordered. Use the private number. Tell him it is regarding the partners' ball. I stood in the shadows of the bookshelf, listening. My heart hammered against my ribs. A moment later, a voice came over the speakerphone. It was Connor. His voice was breathless, eager, dripping with a sickening sweetness I recognized too well. Mr. Hale's office, this is Connor Baxter speaking. Atticus leaned back, winking at me. He didn't speak. He let the silence stretch, making Connor sweat. Hello, Connor said again, his voice cracking slightly. Mr. Baxter, a woman's voice said, smooth and professional. It was Atticus's executive assistant calling from the other line. Mr. Hale has asked me to convey a personal message. Yes, of course, Connor stammered. I am listening. Mr. Hale has been reviewing the quarterly performance metrics, the assistant said. He has taken a particular interest in your aggressive management style. He believes it is time to recognize the future leadership of this firm. I could hear Connor inhale sharply. I could almost see him grinning, giving a thumbs up to Megan across the room. That is incredibly generous of him, Connor gushed. I have always tried to embody the values of the firm. Indeed, the assistant continued, Mr. Hale requests your presence at the gala tomorrow night. He has prepared a special segment in the program specifically to highlight your contributions. He wants you front and center, Mr. Baxter. Bring your wife. This will be a night to remember. I will be there, Connor said, his voice trembling with excitement. Absolutely. Please tell Mr. Hale I am honored. I won't let him down. We are counting on it, the assistant said. Click. The line went dead. Atticus looked at me. He took the bait, hook, line, and sinker, Atticus said. He thinks he is getting a promotion. He thinks he is getting a corner office and a key to the executive washroom. I stepped out of the shadows. He is celebrating right now, I said, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. He is probably opening a bottle of champagne. He thinks he won. He thinks I am out on the street looking for a shelter while he prepares to take my house. Let him celebrate, Atticus said. The higher he climbs, the harder he falls. And tomorrow night, we cut the elevator cable. But there was one loose end. One thing that was gnawing at me. My house. The house Patricia and I bought 40 years ago. The house where I raised that ungrateful boy. Connor had changed the locks. He had claimed it as his own. He was already calculating the equity, counting the money he would get from leveraging my memories. He wanted the asset. He wanted the value. I looked at Atticus. I need a phone. Atticus pushed a sleek mobile across the desk. Be my guest. I picked it up. My fingers punched in a number I hadn't called in 5 years, but I knew it by heart. It belonged to Mitch. Mitch was a guy I came up with in the union. He ran a demolition and heavy construction crew now. He was the kind of guy who didn't ask questions if the money was green and the friendship was old. The phone rang 3 times. Yeah, Mitch's voice rasped like gravel in a blender. Mitch, it is Leo, I said. Leo Baxter. Leo, Mitch shouted. I thought you were dead or retired in Florida. What are you doing calling me this late? I am not in Florida. Mitch, I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. I am in a war. And I need a favor. A big one. Name it, Mitch said immediately. For you, anything. You still have that excavator, I asked. The big Cat 349. Sure, sitting in the yard in Queens. Why? I need you to meet me at my house, I said. Tonight. Bring the crew. Bring the sledgehammers. Bring everything. Leo, what is going on? Mitch asked, his tone changing. My son changed the locks, Mitch, I said. He thinks the house belongs to him. He thinks he can sell it out from under me. He thinks the value of that property is going to save his neck. I paused, gripping the phone so tight the plastic creaked. I want to renovate, I said, cold as ice. Renovate? Mitch asked, confused. At night. I want to remove the value, Mitch. I want you to gut it. The extension I built in '95. The garage. The deck. Tear it down. If he wants the house, he can have the dirt. But he is not getting a single board that I nailed together with my own hands. There was a silence on the line. Then Mitch laughed. A low, dark laugh of understanding. Scorched earth, huh? Mitch said. I like it. I never liked that kid of yours anyway. Too shiny. Can you do it? I asked. I will be there in an hour, Mitch said, with the wrecking ball. I hung up. Atticus was watching me, a look of pure delight on his face. You are going to demolish your own home? He asked. Not all of it, I said, straightening my new silk tie. Just the parts that add value. Just the parts he needs to secure his loan. By tomorrow morning, that appraisal is going to come in a lot lower than he expects. Atticus poured me another scotch. Leonard, he said, raising his glass. You are a man after my own heart. To the demolition. To the demolition, I said. We drank. Outside, the storm was passing, but inside me, the hurricane was just making landfall. Connor wanted a fight. He wanted to play with the big boys. Well, he was about to learn that you don't mess with a man who knows how to build things because that man knows exactly how to take them apart. I walked to the window looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow night, I would be on a stage. But tonight, I would be in the mud with a sledgehammer taking back what was mine. My son thought he had 24 hours. He didn't even have 24 minutes before his inheritance turned into dust. I sat in the back of Mitch's pickup truck, parked 3 houses down under the deep shadow of an oak tree. The rain had stopped, leaving the street slick and black, reflecting the streetlights like oil. My house, or what was left of it, stood silent in the darkness. We had done our work. The beautiful mahogany deck I had built with my own hands was gone, reduced to splinters, and hauled away. The copper piping was stripped. The vintage clawfoot tub Patricia loved was sitting in Mitch's yard now. The house was a shell. It was a skeleton. It still had walls and a roof, but the heart was gone. It was cold. It was empty. Just like the relationship with my son. Beside me, Atticus held a tablet, the screen glowing with a ghostly blue light. He had insisted on installing hidden cameras in the living room and kitchen before we left. He said, "You are going to want to see this, Leonard. It is part of the therapy." At 10 p.m., a silver Porsche screeched into my driveway. Connor. He was driving too fast, aggressive, reckless. Megan was in the passenger seat. I could see her gesturing wildly even before they got out. They looked like vultures circling a carcass, impatient to pick the bones clean. They marched up the walkway. Connor didn't even try the key I knew he had. He kicked the front door. He was expecting a fight. He was expecting a stubborn old man clinging to his recliner. Instead, the door swung open, revealing the hollow darkness inside. Atticus handed me the tablet. "Turn up the volume," he whispered. On the screen, I saw them stumble into the hallway. Connor fumbled for the light switch. When the bulbs flickered on, the look on his face was worth every drop of sweat I had shed tearing that place apart. "It is empty," Megan shrieked, her voice tinny through the device speakers. "It is freaking empty, Connor. Where is the furniture? Where are the antiques?" They ran into the living room. The hardwood floors were bare, scratched, and dusty. The antique rug Patricia had inherited from her grandmother was gone. The oak bookshelves were gone. Even the light fixtures were stripped, leaving only bare bulbs hanging from wires like nooses. "He sold it," Connor muttered, spinning around in a circle. "The old bastard sold everything." "He cannot do that," Megan screamed, kicking a pile of drywall dust. "That was our inheritance. That china cabinet was worth $5,000. I already promised it to my decorator." I watched her face twist into a mask of pure, ugly greed. She didn't care that I was gone. She didn't ask if I was safe. She was mourning a china cabinet. "Search the place," Connor ordered, his voice shaking with panic. "Find the deed. Find his bank books. He must have left something. He is senile, remember. He forgets things." They tore through the empty rooms like feral animals. They ripped open the few remaining built-in cupboards. They smashed the drywall looking for a wall safe that never existed. It was pathetic. It was revealing. In the kitchen, amidst the debris of what used to be a happy home, Megan found the box. I had left it there on purpose. A single cardboard box sitting in the middle of the counter. It wasn't hidden. It was bait. "Connor, look at this!" she yelled. She ripped the lid off. Inside was not money. It was not a deed. It was a stack of old leather-bound books. Patricia's diaries. My wife wrote in them every day for 30 years. She chronicled our life, the good and the bad. Megan pulled one out, flipping the pages, carelessly tearing the fragile paper. "It is just trash," she spat, throwing it on the floor. "Just the old woman's ramblings." "Wait," Connor said, picking up a specific volume. The one from 1990. "Wait. Look at this entry." He read it aloud, and his voice trembled. April 4th. "Leonard came home angry today. He lent $20,000 to Megan's father to start his dealership. I told him he would never see that money again. He said it was for family. He is too good for this world. He trusts too many snakes." I watched Megan's face go pale on the screen. $20,000, Connor whispered. "In 1990, that is, with interest." Megan snatched the diary from his hands. Her eyes were wide, manic. "Lies," she hissed. "My father is a self-made man. He never took money from a mechanic. This is just senile scribbles." She ripped the page out. Then another. Then she threw the book against the wall and began stomping on it, tearing the binding, destroying the memory of the woman who had welcomed her into our family with open arms. I felt Mitch's hand on my shoulder in the dark truck. "Do you want me to go down there, Leo? I can stop them." "No," I said, my voice cold as the grave. "Let them destroy it. It is just paper. They cannot destroy the truth. And the truth is already scanned and safe with my lawyer." Inside the house, Connor was pacing, running his hands through his perfect hair, messing it up until he looked deranged. "We need him, Megan," he said. "We need him here. We need him to sign. If he is gone, if he liquidated the assets, the loan sharks, the audit." He stopped breathing heavily. "He is missing." Connor said, a light bulb going on in his desperate mind. "That is it. He is missing. He wandered off. He is a danger to himself." He pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Megan asked, stopping her destruction of the diary. "I am calling the police," Connor said. "I am filing a missing persons report. I will tell them he had a psychotic break, that he destroyed the house and ran away. When they find him, we will have him committed immediately. An involuntary psychiatric hold. 72 hours. That is enough time to get power of attorney." He dialed 911. I watched my son lie to the operator. I watched him fake tears. I watched him describe his father as a confused, violent old man who needed to be contained for his own safety. "He is here at the house," Connor sobbed into the phone. He smashed everything. He is gone. Please, you have to find him. He is not well." He hung up, wiping his dry eyes. "There," he said, his voice instantly returning to normal. "Now we wait. When the cops pick him up, we rush in with the doctor. We sedate him. We get the signature." Atticus leaned forward in the truck, his face illuminated by the screen. "Now, Leonard," he said softly. "Now we play the ace." He handed me his phone. "Call him," Atticus said. "Not Connor. Call the chief." I took the phone. I knew the number. Chief Russo had been an apprentice on my crew 30 years ago, before he joined the force. I had taught him how to wire a breaker box. I had bailed him out of trouble more than once. He was a good man. And he was the chief of police for this precinct. I dialed. It rang once. Chief Russo's private line, a gruff voice answered. "Tony, it is Leo Baxter," I said. Leo, the chief's voice, warmed instantly. "I haven't heard from you since the union picnic. How are you holding up?" "I am fine, Tony," I said. "But my son, he is confused. He just called dispatch. He thinks I am missing." "Missing," Tony laughed. "I am talking to you right now. You sound clear as a bell." "He is trying to cause trouble, Tony," I said. "He is in some financial hot water. He wants to declare me incompetent to get my assets. He is lying to your officers." There was a silence on the line. The kind of silence that happens when a good cop smells a bad crime. "Okay, Leo," Tony said, his tone shifting to professional. "Where are you?" "I am safe," I said. "I am with legal counsel. But I need you to do me a favor. Call him back. Tell him I am not missing. And tell him exactly where I am." "Where are you, Leo?" I took a deep breath, looking at the contract Atticus had handed me earlier that evening. "Tell him I am at the Hale building," I said. "Tell him I am currently in a meeting to close the purchase on the commercial property at 445 Park Avenue." Tony whistled low and long. "The building his firm is in." "The very same," I said. "Consider it done, Leo." I hung up. I watched the screen. Inside the house, Connor's phone rang. He snatched it up, looking at the caller ID. "It is the police," he whispered to Megan. "They must have found him already." He put it on speaker mode, his face arranging itself into a mask of concerned grief. "Officer, did you find him?" Connor asked, his voice trembling perfectly. Is my father okay? Mr. Baxter, this is Chief Russo, the voice boomed from the phone loud and clear in the empty kitchen. Oh, Chief, Connor stammered. Thank you for getting involved personally. My father, he is very sick. Your father is fine, Mr. Baxter, the chief said, his voice like granite. I just got off the phone with him. He is not missing. And he is certainly not sick. But the house, Connor sputtered, looking around at the ruins. He destroyed the house. He is out of his mind. He is renovating, Chief Russo corrected. It is his house. He can do what he wants with it. And as for his location, he asked me to inform you that he is busy. Busy, Connor asked. Doing what? Wandering the streets. No, the chief said, enjoying the moment. He is currently executing a purchase agreement. According to my records, Leonard Baxter is in the process of buying the commercial tower at 445 Park Avenue. Connor froze. Megan froze. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. That is my office building, Connor whispered. Yes, it is, the chief said. So I suggest you stop wasting police resources with false reports, Mr. Baxter. Filing a false report is a crime. And I would hate to have to send a squad car over there to arrest a lawyer for fraud. Have a good night. The line clicked dead. Connor dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a crack. He looked at Megan. His face was gray, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond debt, beyond money. He is buying the building, Connor wheezed. He is buying the firm's building. Megan shook her head, backing away. That is impossible. He is an electrician. He is broke. He played us, Honor screamed, suddenly kicking the cabinet door so hard it splintered. He played us the whole time. He has money. He has millions. And he just bought my job. He sank to the floor, sliding down the cabinets amidst the drywall dust and the torn pages of his mother's diary. He put his head in his hands. I am dead, he moaned. I am dead. The audit is Monday. If I don't fix this... I watched them on the screen. My son broken by his own greed. My daughter-in-law calculating her exit strategy, her eyes darting around the empty room like a trapped rat. I turned off the tablet. Let's go, I said to Atticus. I have seen enough. Atticus signaled the driver. The night is young, Leonard, he said. We have a building to buy. And tomorrow, we have a party to crash. As the truck pulled away, I didn't look back at the dark house. I looked forward toward the city lights, toward the future. My son had tried to bury me. He forgot that I was a seed. And tomorrow, I was going to bloom into his worst nightmare. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of black ties and designer gowns, a glittering aquarium, where the sharks of New York's legal world circled each other, holding flutes of champagne. From my vantage point, behind the heavy velvet curtains of the private mezzanine, I watched them. I watched the waiters weaving through the crowd with silver trays. I watched the chandeliers casting prismatic light over the scene. But mostly, I watched my son. Connor was standing near the center of the room holding court. He looked impeccable in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my first car. Megan was draped on his arm, shimmering in a silver dress that looked like it was made of diamonds and spite. To anyone else, they looked like the golden couple, the future of the firm. But I knew better. I had seen the terror in Connor's eyes just 24 hours ago when he found out I wasn't the helpless old man he thought I was. Yet here he was, smiling. It was a manic, desperate smile plastered onto his face like a mask. He was laughing too loud, gesturing too broadly. He was a man walking a tightrope over a pit of spikes, convincing himself that if he just didn't look down, he wouldn't fall. Atticus stood beside me, leaning on his cane, watching a bank of monitors set up by his security team. Look at him. Atticus murmured, his voice low and cold. He is terrified, Leonard. He knows the audit is Monday. He knows you bought the building. but he is clinging to the hope that tonight saves him. He thinks this gala is his coronation. On the screen, I saw Connor clap a senior partner on the back. I could almost hear the lies spilling out of his mouth. He is telling them he is coming into money, I said, reading his lips. Look at the way he is touching his chest. False modesty. He is telling them his father is ailing and he is managing the estate. He is digging his own grave with a silver spoon, Atticus said. Atticus pressed a button on the console. Below us on the main stage, a massive LED screen flickered to life. It was broadcasting a live feed of the room, zooming in on the guests, making them feel like movie stars. The camera panned across the crowd and landed on Connor. He beamed at his own reflection, towering over the room. He raised his glass to the camera, acting as if the attention was his birthright. He didn't realize that screen wasn't a tribute. It was a microscope. And we were about to turn up the heat. It is time, Leonard Atticus said, adjusting his silk lapels. The lions are hungry. Let us go feed them. We left the mezzanine and took the private elevator down to the ballroom level. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not with fear, but with a strange, cold adrenaline. For years I had walked into rooms feeling less than, feeling like the dirt on my boots made me invisible. Tonight I was wearing a suit cut by the finest tailor in Manhattan. I had the deed to a skyscraper in my jacket pocket, and I had the truth on my side. The elevator doors opened. We stood before the massive double doors of the ballroom. 2 security guards bowed their heads to Atticus. Open them, Atticus commanded. The doors swung outward. The noise of the party spilled out for a second, and then vanished as if someone had cut the power. The sudden silence rippled through the room, starting near the entrance and spreading outward like a wave. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. We stepped into the light. Atticus walked first, his cane tapping a rhythmic warning on the marble floor. I walked half a step behind him on his right side, not as a servant, but as his right hand. The crowd parted. It wasn't just respect. It was shock. They were looking at Atticus Hale, the recluse, the myth, the man whose name was on their paychecks, but whose face they hadn't seen in 5 years. And then they looked at me. I saw the confusion in their eyes. Who is the silver-haired man with the broad shoulders and the eyes like granite? Is he a new partner? Is he a client? We walked straight down the center aisle toward the stage where the managing partner, Sterling, had just frozen mid-speech. But I wasn't looking at Sterling. I was looking for one face in the crowd. I found him. Connor was standing near the front, the champagne glass halfway to his mouth. He was staring at the live feed on the giant screen behind the stage, which was now broadcasting our entrance. He saw the camera focus on Atticus, and then he saw me. I watched the blood drain from his face in real time. It started at his cheeks, turning them a sickly gray, and washed down to his neck. His eyes bulged. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked from the screen to the aisle and back again. His brain was trying to process the impossible. The man he had shoved into the rain yesterday. The man he had called a bum. The man he had locked out of his own home. That man was walking arm in arm with the God of his universe. The realization hit him like a physical blow. I saw his hand tremble. The crystal flute slipped from his fingers. It seemed to fall in slow motion, turning end over end, catching the light before it shattered on the hardwood floor. Crash. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent room. Champagne splashed onto his tuxedo shoes, the expensive leather soaking up the mess. Megan gasped, jumping back, but Connor didn't move. He couldn't move. He was paralyzed by the absolute horrifying clarity of his mistake. We reached the front of the room. Atticus stopped just a few feet from where Connor stood. The entire room held its breath. Atticus looked at Connor, then at the shattered glass on the floor. "Slippery grip, Mr. Baxter," Atticus said, his voice projecting to the back of the room without a microphone. "You seem to have a habit of dropping things of value. Your integrity. Your family. And now my crystal." Connor made a noise, a strangled squeak. Mr. Hale. And this Atticus continued gesturing to me must be the father you told everyone was senile. The burden you were so graciously managing. I stepped forward. I towered over my son. Up close, I could smell the fear on him. It smelled like sweat and cheap ambition. Hello, Connor, I said, my voice steady and hard. You told me to use the service entrance. I decided to upgrade. Connor looked at me, then at Atticus, then at the hundreds of people watching him on the giant screen. He realized in that second that there was no promotion. There was no special segment. There was only the drop. Dad, he whispered, his voice trembling so bad he could barely form the word. Dad, what are you doing here? I am here to sign those papers, son, I said, reaching into my jacket. Not the transfer deed, the eviction notice. I pulled out the document Atticus had prepared. It wasn't for the house. It was for the building we were standing in. It was for the office he worked in. You wanted me to leave my home, I said. So I bought yours. Connor's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of a table to keep from collapsing into the puddle of champagne and glass. The crowd murmured a low, rising sound of shock and scandal. Atticus clapped a hand on my shoulder, smiling at the room, like a shark who had just found dinner. Ladies and gentlemen, Atticus announced, the entertainment has just arrived. The silence that followed Atticus Hale's announcement was heavier than the massive crystal chandelier hanging above our heads. It pressed down on the room, suffocating the whispers and the clinking of glasses, until the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the frantic, shallow breathing of my son Connor. He stood frozen near the stage, a statue of terror trapped in the spotlight that was never meant for him. Beside him, the puddle of spilled champagne soaked into the carpet, a spreading stain that perfectly mirrored the ruin spreading through his life. Atticus did not rush. He was a master of the courtroom, and he knew that the most powerful weapon in a lawyer's arsenal was the pause. He let the moment stretch until it was almost painful, until every eye in the room was fixed on him and the silver-haired stranger standing at his seat. He tapped the microphone lightly, the sound echoing like a thunderclap in the silent ballroom. Yesterday morning, I decided to conduct a little experiment. Atticus began, his voice conversational, but carrying a dangerous undercurrent. I left my car. I left my wallet. I put on an old coat, and I took the Q44 bus into the city. I wanted to see the world from the ground level again. I wanted to remind myself who we are supposed to be fighting for. He walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at the sea of tuxedos and gowns. On that bus, I was shoved. I was mocked. I was treated like an inconvenience. Until one man stepped in. A man who didn't know who I was. A man who didn't know I could buy the bus line. He stood up for me simply because it was the right thing to do. He offered me his seat. He offered me his protection. And when we got off, he offered me his company because he thought I was lonely. Atticus placed a hand on my shoulder. I stood tall in my Italian suit, my face impassive, though inside my heart was racing. I looked at Connor. He was shaking his head slightly, mouthing the word no over and over again. This man, Atticus, continued, his voice rising, is Leonard Baxter. He is a master electrician. He is a man of honor. And he is the father of the employee we were about to honor tonight. The crowd turned as one, looking from me to Connor. The judgment in their eyes was palpable. Connor shrank under the scrutiny, looking for a place to hide, but there was nowhere to go. We walked to this building together, Atticus said, his tone hardening. I wanted to see the office through the eyes of a visitor. I wanted to see how we treat the people who walk through our doors. And what I found was a disgrace. Atticus pointed a long, bony finger directly at Connor. The gesture was like a spear throw. You, Connor Baxter. You saw your own father in the lobby. You saw an old man standing next to him. And you didn't see family. You didn't see a human being. You saw a stain on your reputation. You ordered security to throw us out. You called me trash. You called your father an embarrassment. Connor tried to speak. Mr. Hale, please. I didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. Silence, Atticus roared, and the power in his voice made the glasses on the tables tremble. I am not finished. Being rude is one thing, Connor. Arrogance is a flaw, but it is not a crime. But what you did upstairs in that boardroom, that was not arrogance, that was evil. Atticus signaled to the technician in the booth. You wanted to declare your father incompetent. Atticus said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You wanted to steal the home he built with his own hands to cover your gambling debts. You told him he was senile. You told him he had no choice. Well, Connor, I think it is time the partners of this firm saw exactly what kind of man you are when you think no one is watching. Play the tape. The massive LED screen behind us, which had been displaying the firm's logo, flickered. The image changed. It was grainy black and white security footage, but the audio was crystal clear. It was the boardroom from yesterday. There was Connor standing over me, his face twisted in rage. There was Megan sitting at the head of the table looking bored and cruel. And there was me sitting in the chair, looking small and defeated. The audio boomed through the ballroom speakers. If you don't sign these papers, Dad, I swear to God I will have you declared incompetent. The crowd gasped. It was a collective sound of shock and revulsion. I have a doctor on payroll who will testify that you cannot tie your own shoes. I will put you in the cheapest state-run facility I can find. On the screen, Connor slammed his hand on the table. The violence of the gesture made people in the audience flinch. You selfish old bastard. You have nothing without me. The camera angle shifted, showing Megan. Her voice cut through the air, shrill and hateful. Shut up, old man. One more word and I will have security drag you out by your hair. In the ballroom, the real Megan let out a strangled cry. She covered her mouth, looking around wildly, realizing that every social climb she had ever attempted, every bridge she had built, was incinerating in real time. The video continued. It showed the guards dragging us out. It showed Connor fixing his tie, dusting off his hands, as if he had just taken out the trash. Atticus signaled again, and the screen went black. The lights came up. The silence was different now. It wasn't the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of a lynch mob. The partners, the clients, the judges, and politicians in the room were looking at Connor with expressions of pure disgust. Sterling, the managing partner, looked like he was going to be sick. That, Atticus said, pointing at the dark screen, is the man you wanted to promote. A man who abuses the legal system to victimize his own flesh and blood. A man who employs corrupt doctors to imprison the innocent. A man who steals from the very people who gave him life just to fund a lifestyle he cannot afford. Atticus walked down the steps of the stage, moving toward Connor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, giving him a wide berth. You are fired, Connor. Atticus said, his voice calm but final. You are fired effective yesterday. You are barred from this building. You are barred from the profession. I will personally see to it that the Bar Association disbars you before the sun comes up. Connor fell to his knees. It wasn't a figure of speech. His legs simply gave out. He collapsed onto the hardwood floor, sobbing. Mr. Hale, please. Connor begged, grabbing at the hem of Atticus's jacket. I have debts. They will kill me. I needed the money. You should have thought of that before you tried to bury your father. Atticus said, pulling his jacket away from Connor's grasp. Then Atticus turned his gaze to Megan. She was standing frozen near the edge of the stage, her face a mask of crumbling plaster. And you, Atticus said, the woman who thinks old people smell, the woman who wanted to sell a man's life for a china cabinet. Megan's eyes darted around the room. She saw the wives of the partners whispering behind their hands. She saw the photographers zooming in on her face. She realized her life as a socialite was over. She was now a pariah. "It wasn't me," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "It was Connor. He made me do it." "I didn't want to lie," I shouted from the stage. My voice was strong, amplified by the microphone I had picked up. "You were the one who found the doctor, Megan. You were the one who researched the nursing homes. You tore up my wife's diary. You destroyed the only thing I had left of her because you couldn't sell it." The crowd turned on her. The judgment was absolute. Megan snapped. The pressure, the humiliation, the sudden loss of her future, it was too much. She looked at me standing on the stage, looking powerful and untouchable, and something in her broke. "You ruined everything," she screamed, her face contorted into something ugly and feral. "You useless old man. You should have just signed," she lunged. She didn't run away. She ran toward the stage. She kicked off her high heels and sprinted up the stairs, her eyes fixed on the microphone in my hand. She wanted to silence me. She wanted to grab the narrative back. She wanted to hurt me. "Give me that," she yelled, reaching for me, her fingernails like claws. "Stop talking. Stop lying." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just watched her come. Before she could get within 5 feet of me, a wall of black suits materialized. Atticus's private security detail. A massive guard stepped in front of me, intercepting her charge. He caught her by the arms, stopping her momentum instantly. "Let me go," she screamed, thrashing against him. "I need to explain." "He is lying. He is senile." The guard didn't say a word. He simply spun her around, pinning her arms behind her back. Another guard moved in, securing her other side. They lifted her off her feet, her expensive silver dress bunching up her bare feet, kicking at the air. "Get her out of here," Atticus commanded from the floor. "And call the police. I believe we have an assault to add to the list of charges." Megan screamed as they dragged her away, kicking and spitting, her shrieks echoing off the high ceilings until the heavy double doors slammed shut, cutting her off. The room was deadly silent again. All eyes turned to Connor, still kneeling on the floor, sobbing into his hands. And then they turned to me. I looked down at my son. He looked so small, so broken. For a moment, I felt a pang of the old instinct, the father's need to protect his child. But then I remembered the rain. I remembered the locks. I remembered the look in his eyes when he told me I was nothing. Atticus walked back up the stairs and stood beside me. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice soft now, almost sad. "I apologize for the disruption, but sometimes you have to tear down the rotten structure to build something new." He handed me the microphone. "Leonard," he said, "the floor is yours." I took the microphone. My hand was steady. I looked out at the sea of faces. I looked at the luxury, the wealth, the power. And I realized none of it mattered if you didn't have a soul. I cleared my throat. "My son needs money," I said, my voice filling the room. "He needs $2 million to replace what he stole from you. He thought my house would save him." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It wasn't a speech. It was the bill of sale Mitch had faxed over an hour ago. "Connor," I said, looking down at him. "You wanted the equity, you wanted the asset." Connor looked up, his eyes red and swollen, hope flickering for a brief second. "I sold the house this morning," I said. Connor gasped. You sold it?" I did," I said. "To a developer. For cash. Fast sale." "Where's the money?" Connor asked, his voice trembling. "Dad, where's the money? We can pay them back. We can fix this. Give me the money." I ripped the paper in half, then in half again. I let the pieces flutter down from the stage like confetti raining down on his head. "I donated it," I said. "Every cent. I gave it to the Electrical Workers Union Pension Fund, for the widows and orphans of men who actually worked for a living." Connor let out a sound that wasn't human. It was the wail of a man watching his last lifeline being cut. He collapsed completely, curling into a ball on the floor. "You have nothing, Connor," I said. "And now neither do I. We are even." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The police were coming. Not the officers Connor had lied to, but the real police. The ones coming for a thief. I handed the microphone back to Atticus. "I am done," I said. Atticus nodded. "You did well, Leonard. You did well." As the police burst through the doors to arrest my son, I turned my back. I didn't watch them cuff him. I didn't watch them read him his rights. I walked toward the exit, my head held high, my steps echoing on the stage. I was homeless. I was childless. But for the first time in years, I was free. I stood center stage, holding the microphone like it was a heavy wrench, my grip tight enough to turn steel white. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a vacuum, where all the air had been sucked out by the sheer magnitude of the revelation. Connor was on the floor, a crumpled mess of tuxedo fabric and shattered ego, looking up at me with eyes that were no longer arrogant. They were the eyes of a trapped animal, realizing the cage door was locked. He was waiting for me to scream. He was waiting for the rage of a father scorned to spill out in curse words and violence. That is what he would have done. That is what a weak man does. But I did not raise my voice. I did not curse. I simply looked at him with the cold detachment of a coroner examining a corpse. "You wanted the house, Connor," I said, my voice amplified, filling every corner of the room without trembling. "You told me you needed the equity. You told me the market was volatile and you were just trying to protect the asset. You lied. You needed my home to plug the $2 million hole you dug in this firm's accounts. You were banking on that sale. You were counting on it like it was money already in your pocket." Connor nodded frantically, tears streaking his face. "Yes, Dad, yes, I need it. Please. If I can just show them I have the liquidity. If I can just put a down payment on the restitution. Maybe they won't press charges. Just give me the deed. We can sell it tonight. We can fix this." I reached into the inner pocket of my Italian suit. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a deed. It was a receipt. A simple carbon copy receipt from a transaction made at 9 this morning. I unfolded it slowly, letting the crisp sound echo in the microphone. "You are too late, son," I said softly. Connor froze. "What?" "The house in Queens," I said, looking at the paper. "The house where your mother planted her hydrangeas. The house where you took your first steps. It is gone. I sold it this morning. A cash offer from a developer who wants to put up a parking lot." Connor's face lit up with a grotesque hope. "You sold it. That is great, Dad. That is perfect. Where is the check? Give me the check. We can wire the funds right now." I looked at him, and for a moment I felt a flicker of pity, not for the man he was, but for the boy he could have been. "There is no check," I said. Connor stopped blinking. "What do you mean? You said you sold it." "I did," I replied. "But I didn't keep the money. I know you think I am just a selfish old man, Connor. You think I hoard everything for myself. But I learned a long time ago that money is only good for what it can build. And since you tried to destroy the lives of the elderly, since you threatened to throw me into a state-run facility to rot, I decided to build something for them." I held up the receipt so the camera could catch it, projecting the image onto the giant screen behind me. "I donated every single cent," I said, my voice hard as granite. $450,000. It went directly to the St. Jude's Fund for Indigent Seniors. It is going to pay for legal defense for old men and women who have children exactly like you." The crowd gasped. A ripple of applause started somewhere in the back, and then died down as the tension rose again. Connor made a sound like a dying engine. You gave it away, Vit. Every dime," I said. "But I need it," he shrieked, scrambling to his feet, his hands clawing at the air. "I need it to stay out of jail." "You can't do this. You have millions," Atticus said. "You have millions. Use your own money." "Save me." I looked at him. "My money," I said, stepping closer to the edge of the stage looming over him. "My money came from crawling through crawl spaces filled with asbestos. It came from wiring skyscrapers in the freezing winter wind when my fingers were so numb I couldn't feel the pliers. It came from 40 years of sweat and blood and honest labor. That money is clean, Connor, and I will be damned if I use a single penny of my hard-earned life to save a thief and a predator. I don't pay ransoms for demons, not even the ones I raised." Connor screamed a raw, primal sound of total defeat. "You are killing me. You are sending me to prison." "I didn't send you anywhere," I said. "You bought the ticket yourself." I just punched it. Boom. The double doors at the back of the ballroom flew open with a crash that shook the walls. It wasn't guests. It wasn't the press. Walking through the doors was a man who looked like he was carved out of bedrock. Mitch. My old friend from the union, wearing a suit that looked uncomfortable on his massive frame but with a badge clipped to his belt that looked very natural. And behind him, flanking him like wolves, were 6 agents in windbreakers emblazoned with 3 letters. FBI. Mitch spotted me on stage and nodded a grim salute. Then he pointed a finger the size of a sausage at Connor. "That is him," Mitch roared, his voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "Secure the room. Nobody leaves." The agents moved in a blur of efficiency. They swarmed the stage. The guests parted instinctively, terrified of being caught in the crossfire. Connor looked around wildly, looking for an exit, looking for a friend, looking for anything but the cold reality closing in on him. Atticus stepped up to the microphone, his voice calm but lethal. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "please remain calm. We are just taking out the trash." Connor tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He scrambled toward the side exit, slipping on his own spilled champagne. Before he could take 3 steps, 2 agents were on him. They didn't tackle him. They didn't need to. They just grabbed him by the arms and jerked him back. Connor Baxter, an agent, barked, "You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent." Connor struggled, thrashing like a fish on a hook. No, look at my father. He has money, he can pay it back, Dad. Dad, tell them." He looked at me, his eyes bulging, desperate, pleading. "Dad, please, I am your son. You can't let them take me." I stood on the stage looking down at him. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was final. "I told you, Connor." I said, my voice quiet but amplified so everyone could hear the break in my heart. "My son died a long time ago. You are just the man who stole his face." They hauled him up. He was weeping now, sobbing openly, snot running down his face onto his expensive tuxedo. It was an ugly sight. A man stripped of his pretense, stripped of his arrogance, left with nothing but his crimes. As they dragged him toward the exit, passing the tables of the people he had tried so hard to impress, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. Megan. She wasn't looking at her husband. She wasn't crying for him. She was moving. While everyone was watching Connor, she had slipped off her heels and was inching toward the kitchen service doors, her silver dress gathered in her hands. She looked like a rat abandoning a sinking ship. She didn't care if Connor went to jail. She just wanted to survive. She reached the swinging doors, pushing them open, looking back once to see if she had been spotted. "Going somewhere, Megan?" I asked into the microphone. She froze. The entire room turned to look at her. I have to go to the bathroom," she stammered, her face pale. "I feel sick." "I am sure you do," I said, "but you might want to check your purse before you leave." She frowned, confused. "What?" "I think you will find your credit cards aren't working tonight," I said. "Or your bank accounts. Or the lease on that Mercedes you parked out front." "What did you do?" she hissed, dropping the act, her voice turning venomous. "I didn't do anything," I said. "But I did have a long talk with my new financial team this afternoon. It turns out you have a lot of debt, Megan. Store cards, personal loans, the financing on your lifestyle. You were drowning in it just like Connor. And debt is a commodity. It can be bought." I signaled to the back of the room. 2 men in dark suits stepped out from the kitchen, blocking her path. They weren't police, they were process servers, and behind them stood a man with a tow truck hook in his hand. "I bought your debt, Megan," I said. "Every cent of it. I bought the note on your car. I bought the judgments from the credit card companies. I own your liabilities, and I am calling them in. Right now." Megan backed away from the process servers, shaking her head. "You can't do that. That is illegal." "It is perfectly legal," Atticus chimed in, stepping up beside me. "It is called a hostile takeover of personal assets. And since you have no means to pay—" One of the men handed her a stack of papers. "You are served, ma'am. We are seizing the vehicle immediately, and we will be garnishing any future wages until the principal of $300,000 is repaid." Megan looked at the papers, then at me, her face twisted. "You old monster," she screamed. "You ruined everything. We were going to be rich. We deserved it." "You deserve what you earn," I said. "And tonight you earned a walk home in the rain." Security escorted her out, not in handcuffs, but in shame, which for a woman like Megan was a fate worse than prison. She was broke, she was exposed, and she was married to a felon. Her social life was over. The room was quiet again. The drama was done. The floor was covered in confetti from the torn receipt font and the puddles of champagne. Mitch walked up to the stage, looking up at me. "You okay, Leo?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. I looked at the empty door where my son had just been dragged out. I felt a hole in my chest, a wind blowing through it. But I also felt lighter. The weight of the lies, the weight of the pretense, it was gone. "I am fine, Mitch," I said, putting down the microphone. "I am just fine." Atticus put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, Leonard," he said. "I think we have done enough damage for one night. Let's get a burger. I know a place in the Bronx that stays open late." I nodded. A burger sounded good. Honest food. We walked off the stage, leaving the elite of New York staring after us. I didn't care about them. I didn't care about their whispers. I was Leonard Baxter, master electrician, and I had just rewired my life. 1 week later, I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse on the 45th floor, overlooking the city that had tried to chew me up and spit me out. The air up here was thin and clean. It smelled of ozone and victory. I held a ceramic mug of tea, warming my hands against the morning chill. I wasn't homeless anymore. In fact, I was technically the landlord of the law firm that had fired my son. Life has a strange sense of humor. Down below on the streets, the reality for Megan and her family was very different. Atticus didn't believe in half measures, and neither did I. The scorched earth policy we had enacted wasn't just about Connor. It was about the root of the rot. It was about the greed that Megan had learned from her father, the same man who had swindled me 30 years ago. My lawyer, Mitch, had been busy. Using the entry from Patricia's diary and the forensic accounting team Atticus provided, we had filed a lien against Megan's father's car dealership. It turned out the loan I gave him in 1990 was the seed money for his business. We calculated 30 years of compound interest plus penalties for fraud. But that wasn't the nail in the coffin. The nail was the audit Atticus triggered. It turned out Megan's father ran his business exactly like Connor ran his life. Leverage, lies, and debt. When the creditors saw our lawsuit, they panicked. They called in their loans. In 48 hours, the dealership was seized. The house in the suburbs was foreclosed. Megan's parents were bankrupt. They blamed Megan for bringing this storm down on them, and in a fit of poetic justice they threw her out. Now Megan was living in the Starlight Motel on the edge of Queens, a place where the sheets are stained and the police visit twice a night. Her Mercedes was gone, seized by the repo men right in front of the Plaza Hotel. Her jewelry was in an evidence locker. She had nothing left but the designer dress on her back and a bitterness that probably tasted like ash. I took a sip of tea watching the clouds drift by. I wasn't happy about their suffering. I didn't take joy in another human being's pain. But I felt a deep, cold satisfaction in the balance of the universe being restored. The intercom buzzed, interrupting the silence. "Mr. Baxter," the doorman said, his voice polite. "There is a woman here to see you. She says her name is Megan. She says it is an emergency." I looked at Atticus, who was sitting in the living room reading the morning paper. He lowered the paper and raised an eyebrow. "Let her up," I said to the intercom. "Are you sure?" Atticus asked. "You don't have to see her, Leonard. You owe her nothing." "I know," I said, walking back inside, "but I need to close the book. I need her to know that the door is shut forever." 5 minutes later, there was a timid knock on the heavy oak door. It was a sound I didn't recognize. Megan didn't knock timidly. She pounded. She demanded. She scratched at the world until it gave her what she wanted. This new sound was the sound of defeat. I opened the door. Megan stood in the hallway. She looked like a ghost of the woman who had sneered at me in the boardroom. Her hair, usually lacquered into a helmet of perfection, was limp and greasy, hanging in strings around her face. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt that looked like they came from a donation bin. Her eyes were red-rimmed with dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights and constant crying. She looked 10 years older than she had a week ago. She looked at me, and then she looked past me into the warm, luxurious expanse of the penthouse. She saw the art on the walls. She saw the marble floors. She saw the life she had tried to steal from me. "Leo," she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't step back. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, filling the frame, blocking her path. "What do you want, Megan?" I asked. She flinched at the sound of her name. "I have nowhere to go," she said, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. It was a practiced move, one she had probably used on Connor 1,000 times, but now the tears looked real because they were born of desperation, not manipulation. "My parents kicked me out. The bank took everything. I am staying in a motel, Leo. There are cockroaches. I can't stay there." "And you think this is a hotel?" I asked, my voice flat. "No," she sobbed. I thought, we are family. I made a mistake, Leo. A horrible mistake. I listened to Connor. He told me you were sick. He told me we had to take control. I didn't want to hurt you. I was just trying to be a good wife." I laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound that made her jump. "Stop it, Megan," I said. "Do not insult my intelligence. I saw the video. I heard you call me a smelly old man. I saw you tear up my wife's diary. You weren't a victim. You were the architect. You pushed him. You wanted the lifestyle, and you didn't care who you had to step on to get it." She shook her head frantically, reaching out to grab my hand. I stepped back, avoiding her touch as if she were contagious. "Please, Leo," she begged. "I am sorry. I will do anything. I will cook. I will clean. Just let me stay in the guest room. Just for a few weeks until I get back on my feet. I can't be on the street. I am not built for this." "Not built for this," I repeated. "You mean you are not built for consequences. You are not built for the realities, see, that the rest of us live in. You thought you were royalty, Megan. You thought you were better than everyone else." I looked at her kneeling on the hallway runner. Yes, she had actually dropped to her knees. It was a pathetic display. The woman who had screamed at me to sign away my home was now groveling at my feet, clutching at the hem of my trousers. "Please," she wailed, her dignity completely gone. "Just help me. You have millions. You won't even miss it. Just give me some money. Give me a chance." I looked down at her. I saw the greed still lurking behind the tears. She didn't want forgiveness. She wanted access. She wanted back on the gravy train. If I let her in, she would be stealing the silverware within an hour. I reached into my pocket. Megan's eyes lit up. She stopped crying for a split second, thinking I was reaching for a checkbook or a wad of cash. She thought she had won. She thought the tears had worked. I pulled my hand out. I held a single crumpled $1 bill. I tossed it at her. It fluttered down, landing on the carpet in front of her knees. She stared at it confused. "What is this?" she whispered. "It is bus fare," I said, cold as the winter wind. She looked up at me, her mouth open in shock. "You said you aren't built for the real world," I said. "Well, it is time you learned. There is a bus stop 2 blocks from here. It will take you back to Queens. It will take you back to where people work for a living." "Leo," she gasped. "You can't be serious." "I have never been more serious," I said. "Take the dollar, Megan. Get on the bus. Look at the people around you. Look at the old men you used to mock. Look at the workers you used to despise. Learn from them. Learn how to be a human being. Because until you do, you are poorer than anyone on that bus." I stepped back, preparing to close the door. "Go," I said, "and do not come back. If you come here again, I will have you arrested for trespassing. And this time I won't bail you out." She stared at me, her face twisting from sorrow to a mask of pure, ugly hatred. The real Megan surfaced for one last moment. "You will rot in hell, you old miser," she screamed, grabbing the dollar and scrambling to her feet. "I hope you die alone." "I am not alone," I said, looking back at Atticus, who raised his teacup in a silent toast. "And I am already in heaven compared to where you are going." I slammed the door. The sound echoed through the hallway, a final definitive boom that severed the last tie to the toxicity that had plagued my life. I locked the deadbolt. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the silence. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a profound sense of calm. I had cut out the cancer. It was done. I walked back into the living room. Atticus was pouring a second cup of tea. "Did she take the dollar?" Atticus asked, his eyes twinkling. "She took it," I said, sitting down in the armchair opposite him. "Good," Atticus said. "Maybe she will meet someone on the bus who can teach her some manners, though I doubt it. Some people are beyond saving Leonard." I picked up my tea. "I know," I said, "but I am not." We sat there, 2 old men in a castle in the sky, drinking tea while the world below churned on. I had lost a son, but I had found a brother in arms. I had lost a house, but I had found a home. And as I looked out at the skyline I had helped build, I knew that for the first time in my life, I was truly the master of my own destiny. The bus ride was over. I was finally in the driver's seat. The gavel hit the wood, with a sound I imagined was like a coffin lid slamming shut. I wasn't there to hear it. I was 40 floors up, sitting on my balcony, watching the sun struggle to break through the smog of the city. Atticus had gone to the courthouse. He said he needed to see it through to the end. He said he needed to ensure the judge understood the gravity of a son betraying a father. When Atticus returned, his face was grim but satisfied. 15 years, he said, pouring himself a glass of water. 15 years in a federal penitentiary. No possibility of parole for at least 12. I nodded slowly. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just felt a quiet release, like a knot in my back that had been tight for decades finally unspooling. Connor was gone. He was a number now, an inmate in a cage of his own making. The audit had been devastating. The evidence of the stolen $2 million was irrefutable. The testimony of the document forger sealed his fate. My son was not just a bad seed, he was a criminal, and the world was safer with him behind bars. "Do you want to know what he said?" Atticus asked, sitting opposite me. before they took him away. No, I said, looking out at the skyline. I don't. Words are cheap, Atticus. I spent a lifetime listening to his words. I listened to his promises to pay me back. I listened to his lies about loving me. I am done with words. I only care about actions. Atticus smiled, a genuine warmth reaching his eyes. Then let us take action, he said. Get your coat, Leonard. We have a board meeting. A board meeting, I asked. I am retired, remember? Not this board, Atticus said. We have an acquisition to inspect. We took the elevator down, but we didn't head to the limousine. We walked 2 blocks east to the corner of 3rd and Lexington, the same corner where it had all started. The bus stop. The Q44 pulled up. It was the same route, but the bus looked different. It was cleaner. The paint was fresh. The logo on the side was new. We stepped on. The driver, a young woman with a kind face, smiled at us. Good morning, gentlemen, she said. Take your time. I swiped a card. Not a Metro card. An owner's card. We walked to the back. The seats were new, upholstered in comfortable fabric, not the cracked plastic that used to tear at my trousers. There were signs posted everywhere, priority seating for seniors. Respect is mandatory. I sat down next to Atticus. The engine hummed a smooth vibration beneath our feet. You bought the whole line, I said, shaking my head. We bought the whole line, Atticus corrected. 51% is yours, Leonard. I figured if we are going to ride the bus, we might as well make sure no one gets tripped in the aisle ever again. I looked around. The bus was full, but the atmosphere was different. Maybe it was the new lighting. Maybe it was the strict code of conduct posted by the door. Or maybe it was just me. Maybe the world looked different because I was no longer looking at it from my knees. We rode in silence for a while, watching the city roll by. We passed construction sites where men in hard hats were eating lunch on coolers. I felt a kinship with them, but also a distance. I had graduated. I had survived the war. At 42nd Street, the bus stopped. I looked out the window. On the sidewalk, there was an old man. He looked about my age, maybe a little younger, but he carried himself like he was ancient. He was struggling with 3 heavy grocery bags, the plastic cutting into his fingers. Walking 10 feet ahead of him was a young man, presumably his son. The son was on his phone, laughing, walking fast, oblivious to the struggle behind him. He didn't look back. He didn't offer to help. He just expected the old man to keep up. I felt a flash of the old anger, the heat that used to rise in my neck. But then it faded, replaced by a cool, calm wisdom. I tapped the glass. Atticus looked. He saw the pair on the sidewalk. History repeats itself, Atticus murmured. Not always, I said. Sometimes you break the cycle. I watched the old man stop to catch his breath. He looked tired, defeated. I wanted to open the window and shout at him. I wanted to tell him to drop the bags. I wanted to tell him that he didn't have to accept the scraps of affection that his son threw at him. I wanted to tell him that he was worth more than his utility as a beast of burden. But I couldn't save everyone. I had saved myself. And in doing so, maybe I had planted a flag for others to see. The bus pulled away, leaving the struggling father behind. I sat back, closing my eyes. I had taught the world a lesson. It was a harsh lesson, a brutal lesson, but it was necessary. You do not bite the hand that feeds you. You do not discard the people who built your foundation. And if you do, you better be prepared for the foundation to crumble. We rode to the end of the line and then back again. 2 old men, kings of the concrete jungle, riding a chariot of steel and rubber. That evening, back at the penthouse, the city lights were twinkling like diamonds scattered on black velvet. The silence of the apartment was peaceful, not lonely. Atticus had his own wing, but we often sat together in the main salon playing chess or just reading. It was a friendship forged in fire, a brotherhood of the underestimated. The doorman buzzed. "Mr. Baxter, there is a letter for you." It came via special courier. Send it up, I said. A few minutes later, I held the envelope in my hands. It was plain white, cheap paper. The return address was stamped in red ink. Federal Correctional Institution, Otisville. Inmate number 78402. Connor Baxter. I stared at the name. It looked like a stranger's name. Atticus looked up from his book. Is that from him? I nodded. Atticus took off his reading glasses. You can read it if you want. Maybe he is sorry. Maybe he wants to apologize. I felt the texture of the envelope. It was thin. There was probably a single sheet of paper inside. I imagined what it said. Pleas for money. Promises to change. Blame cast on Megan. Blame cast on the system. Or perhaps the worst thing of all, forgiveness asked for, but not earned. I thought about the 24 hours he gave me. I thought about the locks. I thought about the rain. I stood up and walked to the fireplace. The gas logs were burning a steady, comforting blue and orange flame. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my old Zippo lighter. It was scratched, the brass showing through the chrome. It was the lighter I had carried for 40 years on job sites. It had lit torches to solder pipes in freezing basements. It had lit candles on birthday cakes when Connor was small. It was a tool of my trade, a tool of my past. I flicked the lid open. The familiar clink echoed in the large room. I struck the flint. The flame jumped to life, strong and unwavering. Leonard Atticus said softly, "Are you sure? You might want to know why." I looked at the flame. I know why I said. He did it because he could. He did it because he thought I was weak. I don't need his words, Atticus. I have my own. I held the corner of the envelope to the flame. The paper caught instantly, curling and blackening. I watched the fire eat the return address. I watched it consume the inmate number. I watched it devour the name Connor Baxter. I held it until the heat stung my fingertips, until there was nothing left but ash and a wisp of smoke. I dropped the last burning fragment into the fireplace, watching it turn to gray dust among the fake logs. "It is finished," I said, closing the Zippo with a snap. I turned back to the room, back to my friend, back to my life. I poured 2 fresh cups of tea. "Your move, Atticus," I said, sitting down at the chessboard. Atticus smiled, moving his knight. "It is always your move, Leonard. Always." We played into the night, 2 old lions who had defended their pride. Outside, the city kept moving, indifferent and loud, but in here there was peace. I was Leonard Baxter. I was a father who had done the hardest thing a father can do. I had cut the cord. And for the first time in a long time, I was breathing air that was all my own. This story reminds us that silence is not always a virtue. Sometimes it is the soil where abuse grows. Leo believed that enduring his son's cruelty was a form of parental love. But he learned that true love requires respect, starting with respect for oneself. By burning the letter, he taught us that forgiveness doesn't mean letting toxic people back in. It means freeing yourself from the burden of their validation. It is never too late to reclaim your dignity, to set boundaries, and to demand the respect you deserve, no matter your age. If Leo's journey inspired you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience. How would you handle a betrayal from your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments.